At 5:17 local time in the northern Strait of Hormuz, the first alert does not feel chaotic. It feels cold, technical, exact, a sharp repeating tone moving through the Combat Information Center aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln. Radar operators stare at a display that has suddenly shifted. 3 high-speed contacts have separated from the Iranian coastline and dropped to an extremely low altitude, sliding into the clutter zone where the sea and the signal begin to merge. On the bridge, silence holds for a brief moment. Then the tactical action officer says the words that change everything. Possible anti-ship profiles, multiple bearings closing. That is all it takes. Across the carrier, ordinary routine disappears. Flight deck crews, only seconds away from a standard morning cycle, stop in place and then move fast, not outward but inward. Yellow shirts direct parked aircraft into emergency hold positions. Red shirts rush toward ordnance carts and tie-down stations. Overhead, the loudspeaker snaps to life. Set defensive condition. Clear exposed personnel. Secure the flight deck immediately. Below that deck are 5,000 people, all now inside a ship that has shifted in an instant from powerful warship to potential target. The USS Abraham Lincoln is not operating by itself. It sits at the heart of a strike group, a floating fortress built from steel, radar coverage, and layers of defensive firepower. Ahead of the carrier and off her flanks, 2 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers are already responding. Their Aegis systems push outward through the haze, isolating the low contacts and assembling firing solutions before much of the carrier's crew even understands the full picture. At 5:18, the situation tightens. An E-2D Hawkeye circling above the formation confirms what the spy radars are beginning to indicate. These are not aircraft. They are missile-class tracks, fast, extremely low, and coordinated. Then farther inland, another signal flickers. A launch signature, then one more. This is not a single shot. It is a coordinated wave. Inside the Combat Information Center, the range drops in unforgiving numbers. Bearings refresh, closure rates narrow, the ship still does not shudder. Not yet. But tension moves through Abraham Lincoln like current through metal, through passageways, ladder wells, and sealed hatches. Sailors on internal circuits repeat the same words with stripped-down precision, because feeling has no place in seconds like these. Inbound, multiple inbound. On the bridge, the captain keeps his voice even. Maintain course, escorts engage, no raised voices, no dramatic speeches, no wasted movement, only procedure. At 5:19, the first American interceptors launch. Far off the starboard bow, one destroyer sends a pair of SM-2s off the rails in rapid sequence. Their launch flashes white against the pale Gulf morning before vanishing into speed. A second destroyer follows with another pair. From the carrier's island, sailors looking across the water catch only brief streaks climbing into the sky before flattening toward the horizon. The escorts are firing at ranges so great the eye barely trusts what it sees. That is how quickly the moment has turned real. On the flight deck, tractor crews crouch beside parked Super Hornets while ordnance teams secure loose equipment. A tow bar skids across the painted steel and crashes into a wheel chock. No one even looks. The deck is no longer a platform for launch. It has become a place focused entirely on survival. Then comes the first intercept. One incoming missile vanishes in a flash so distant it barely seems connected to the carrier at all. A white spark. A cloud of fragments. Then empty sky. Inside CIC, the update is logged instantly. Track destroyed. No one reacts. The second and third tracks are still closing. Electronic warfare teams aboard the escorts pour jamming, deceptive signals, noise, and false returns into the battlespace, trying to break the missile's terminal picture before those missiles can form a clear one of their own. On Abraham Lincoln, every radar screen, every repeater, every voice circuit is now locked into the same narrow slice of time. 5:20 local. One of the remaining tracks drops even lower, so low that it disappears into sea clutter for 3 full seconds. That is when the atmosphere aboard the carrier changes. The radar operators no longer sound detached, not frightened, just sharper, tighter, more urgent. One of them leans closer to the screen, trying to pick the return back out of the noise. Another asks the Hawkeye overhead for confirmation. The reply comes back at once. Stand by, stand by. Those 3 seconds feel longer than the previous 3 minutes. Then the track reappears, closer now, still intact. Aegis recalculates. Another interceptor is launched. CIWS mounts aboard the escorts begin to rotate, their white domes turning with cold precision toward a threat still beyond gun range, but no longer distant enough to dismiss. Sailors on the upper decks of Abraham Lincoln hear the unmistakable whine of systems coming online, the kind of sound that signals the final layer is getting ready. The bridge stays controlled. The captain watches the tactical repeater. The carrier holds formation. No sudden turn, no outward sign of fear, just a 100,000-ton warship pressing forward through a narrow channel while steel, software, and split-second timing race to stop what is closing in. At 5:21, another flash breaks across the water. Another intercept, another missile gone, but not the last. One contact survives the second defensive layer and keeps coming. Its speed does not change. Its altitude remains razor-thin above the sea. The escorts have only seconds left to deal with it. The crew aboard the carrier understands that now. You can feel it in the silence between radio calls, in the way men on the flight deck stare past the island toward the horizon, in the way no one says aloud what it means if this one gets through. Range collapses. Time tightens. With less than 20 seconds to impact, one contact is still inbound. At 5:21 local time, that single contact is still coming, and it is now inside the kind of distance where no one on a carrier mistakes procedure for reassurance. Inside the Combat Information Center of USS Abraham Lincoln, the surviving track is no longer just a mark on a screen. It is a countdown. Speed steady, altitude almost fused to the surface. Bearing fixed on the strike group's forward sector. The escort destroyer closest to the threat does not hesitate. Its forward CIWS mount opens first, the 6-barrel gun spinning up with that unmistakable rising mechanical shriek, a sound every sailor in the fleet recognizes, even if they have only heard it during drills. Then it fires. A stream of tungsten rips out into the dawn, invisible at first, visible only through its effect. The sea ahead of the formation erupts in a tight chain of splashes. A fraction of a second later, the inbound missile breaks apart less than a mile from the carrier's bow. The blast is low and violent, throwing burning debris across the water in a fan of smoke and fragments. The bridge windows of Abraham Lincoln shudder from the shock. No one aboard calls it a near miss, but everyone knows exactly how close it was. And then the situation turns again. While sailors on the flight deck are still watching dark fragments fall into the Gulf, surface search radar detects a new problem much closer to the waterline. Fast contacts, multiple small hulls, high speed. They are emerging from separate bearings near the Iranian side of the strait and converging on the strike group like fingers beginning to close. Fast attack craft. At 5:22, what began as an anti-ship missile ambush becomes something larger and far more dangerous. A layered assault. Missiles from shore, swarm pressure from the surface, all unfolding inside one of the narrowest and most sensitive waterways on Earth, the kind of setting that leaves almost no room for hesitation and even less for error. Inside CIC, operators divide their attention without losing rhythm. Air tracks remain on the upper displays, surface contacts bloom below. Bearings are called out one after another, 6, then 8, then 10. Not every boat appears armed and not every crew seems fully committed, but enough of them are moving with clear intent to force an answer. One of the escorts edges slightly outward from the carrier's starboard quarter. It is not a dramatic turn. It is a protective one, a quiet screening move. Deliberate, controlled. The destroyer places itself between the carrier and the incoming small craft, using its guns, sensors, and sheer presence to expand the defensive envelope before the swarm can tighten it. On the bridge of Abraham Lincoln, the captain gives the next order. Warn them once. Bridge-to-bridge transmissions go out immediately on open channels. Iranian military craft approaching U.S. naval formation. You are closing unsafely. Alter course now. The message is repeated. No reply. The boats keep coming. Through long-range optics, they look small against the pale Gulf morning, almost too small to belong in the same scene as a nuclear-powered carrier. But the sailors watching them know better. In confined water, fast boats do not need size to create danger, especially if they carry rockets, mines, or short-range anti-ship weapons. It does not take a large warship to ignite chaos on a crowded flight deck. It takes a single opening. At 5:23, rotor blades begin to turn aboard the carrier. An MH-60 Seahawk on alert status is brought fully online, its crew sprinting through startup while deck teams clear the surrounding area and secure loose gear beneath a wash of fuel fumes and rotor blast. Nearby FA-18S, already positioned for the morning cycle, remain frozen in place. Wings folded, weapons crews crouch low beside them as the ship shifts from launch posture to defensive posture and back again in overlapping layers. That overlap is where the pressure lives, because a carrier cannot simply stop being a carrier in order to protect itself. Aircraft still need room, deck crews still need movement lanes, escorts still need clean firing arcs. Every decision affects 3 others. At 5:24, the Seahawk lifts off. It rises from the deck and banks sharply over the formation, staying low enough to keep visual contact with the fast movers while sending live imagery back to the strike group. From above, the pattern becomes clearer. Several Iranian boats are not merely closing in, they are coordinating. 2 stay wide, forcing the escorts to watch the flanks. 3 drive inward at higher speed. Another trails behind them in a position that suggests command and control, or possibly weapons queuing. Then one of the boats changes behavior, its bow lifts, speed increases, a white sheet of wake forms behind it. Through optics, movement becomes visible around its forward section. not random movement, deliberate movement. Inside CIC, the report comes instantly. Lead craft accelerating, possible weapons preparation. The destroyer screening the carrier answers by shifting its 5-inch gun a few degrees to port. It does not fire. Its remote weapon stations track as well. The message is unmistakable, even without words. Cross the line, and you do not reach the carrier. At 5:25, 2 Super Hornets already airborne on combat air patrol are redirected lower. They descend into armed overwatch, keeping enough distance to avoid unnecessary risk, but staying close enough for their sensors to sharpen the surface picture. Their presence changes the scale of the moment. What had looked like aggressive pressure now feels like a tightening trap beneath American air cover. Still, the boats do not break away. Another radio warning is sent. No response. The lead Iranian craft cuts farther inward, crossing from intimidation into unmistakable threat geometry. Range drops fast. Guns stay trained. Helicopter cameras remain locked. Surface radars refine every movement down to the second. And on the bridge of Abraham Lincoln, with the swarm now fully inside engagement distance, the final uncertainty is gone. The order to engage is no longer theoretical. At 5:25 local time, that order is no longer theoretical. The lead Iranian fast attack craft has moved into the kind of geometry no carrier strike group ignores. It is no longer shadowing, no longer posturing. It is charging across the formation's defensive line, with visible activity near the bow and 2 more boats closing behind it in staggered support. The screening destroyer responds first. A sharp warning burst from its forward gun system strikes the water ahead of the lead craft, throwing up a wall of spray high enough to be seen from the flight deck of USS Abraham Lincoln. It is not a miss. It is a final message. Breakaway. Now. The Iranian boat does not turn. It keeps coming. That is all the confirmation the strike group needs. At 5:26, the destroyer fires for effect. The first rounds land just behind the fast craft's bow, then walk directly into the hull. Through long-range optics and the live helicopter feed, sailors aboard the carrier watch the boat jolt hard as spray and fragments burst from its midsection. Its wake disappears almost instantly. One moment it is racing forward, the next it is drifting helplessly, rolling slightly to port while smoke begins to rise from the stern. The 2 boats behind it react at once. One breaks sharply away, carving a crescent of white water as it turns out of the approach lane. The other hesitates just a fraction too long. The Seahawk overhead drops lower, not to open fire, but to take control of the visual space, its rotor wash pounding the sea while the crew keeps optics and weapons trained on the smaller vessel. Under that pressure, the second boat turns away as well, heading back toward the Iranian side of the strait. But the swarm is not finished. Farther out, 3 additional contacts remain wide and fast, still moving in ways that force the escorts to respect both their position and their intent. One American destroyer shifts again, keeping its hull between the carrier and the widening surface picture. Another holds station off the port quarter, preserving the air defense layout while staying ready to support surface fire if the boats try to regroup. Inside the Combat Information Center aboard Abraham Lincoln, no one treats the withdrawal as a clean ending, because it is not. Electronic warfare operators are now focused on something beyond the boats. During the missile attack and the surface rush, multiple narrow emissions were detected from the Iranian coastline. Not random radar clutter, not civilian traffic, repeated structured signals, fire control quality, or close enough to it to matter. The kind of emissions that suggest the boats were never the primary weapon. They were the pressure layer, the distraction, the moving piece designed to keep American attention fixed forward, while something on shore prepared the next move. At 5:27, that suspicion hardens. The E-2D Hawkeye above the formation pushes fresh data into the strike group's network. The track history lines up. Missile launch signatures, coastal radar activation, surface craft movement, all of it connected to a narrow corridor along the Iranian shoreline where mobile anti-ship systems could fire from pre-surveyed positions and then relocate before any delayed response could catch them. This was being directed from land. On the bridge, the captain of Abraham Lincoln hears the report without changing expression. Identify launch corridor. Prepare counter-strike options. That is the turning point. Up to this moment, the carrier strike group has been absorbing, screening, intercepting, warning. Now the center of gravity shifts, not away from defense, but through it. The ship is no longer dealing only with what is directly ahead. It is preparing to reach back and disable the source of the attack. At 5:28, the flight deck changes character again. What had been a frozen grid of secured aircraft and crouched deck crews begins moving with purpose, not open routine, but controlled urgency. Yellow shirts reopen narrow taxi lanes. Red shirts move ordnance with practiced speed. Brown shirts guide armed Super Hornets toward the catapults, while maintainers clear launch paths inch by inch. Nothing is wasted because no seconds are available to waste. Nearby, an EA-18G Growler is brought forward as well, and that matters. A Growler signals that the next phase is not only about striking targets, it is about blinding radar, disrupting command links, confusing sensors, and collapsing the enemy's picture before the first weapon even reaches its mark. Strike-configured FA-18S are readied with precision-guided munitions, suited for launcher vehicles, radar vans, and hardened command positions. The air wing is not launching into empty sky. It is launching into a battle space that has already shown exactly how dangerous it can be. Then another jolt runs through the formation. At 5:29, a subsurface alert flashes briefly on one of the escorts. Probably false. Maybe not. In waters like these, even a short-lived underwater contact is enough to tighten every watch team on the ship. A helicopter crew acknowledges it and marks the datum. For 30 seconds, the strike group has to consider the possibility that the attack may include a third layer below the surface. The contact disappears as quickly as it appeared, but the effect remains. By now, no one aboard the carrier believes this morning ends with one disabled boat and a handful of intercepted missiles. The first Super Hornet taxis into final position. Steam builds beneath it. Deck crews crouch, point, and signal through practice motions. The shooter drops low, touches the deck, and sends the aircraft into the morning sky. Then another, then another. One after the next, American strike fighters climb out over the Gulf, turning not toward open water, but back toward the coastal corridor where the earlier launch signatures first appeared. Below them, Abraham Lincoln keeps moving, still surrounded by escorts, still at battle stations, still exposed enough to demand absolute discipline. But the atmosphere has changed. What began as an ambush at sea is becoming a search back to shore. At 5:31 local time, the first American strike aircraft are already feet dry on their sensors, though still flying low over the Gulf. They do not rush inland in dramatic fashion. First, they build the picture. An EA-18G Growler leads the outer edge of the package. Its purpose is not direct destruction, but disruption. Behind it, Super Hornets maintain disciplined spacing, radar emissions controlled, targeting pods scanning the narrow coastal corridor where the strike group's kill chain first revealed itself minutes earlier. The shoreline of southern Iran is only now beginning to emerge through the dawn haze. Inside the Growler, the electronic warfare crew gets to work immediately. Signals that had seemed clean and confident while guiding weapons seaward begin to bend under pressure. Coastal search radars flicker. Tracking beams become unstable. Command frequencies thicken with interference. From the air, this kind of disruption is silent, precise, almost invisible. On the ground, it creates hesitation, and hesitation inside a missile battery is often the first step toward collapse. Back over the water, USS Abraham Lincoln and her escorts remain fully defensive. Nothing is relaxed. The carrier continues forward under watch from every direction. CIWS mounts stay trained outward. Escorts preserve spacing. The Hawkeye continues circling overhead, making sure the strike package does not outrun the fleet's understanding of the battle space. Because even while American aircraft move toward the coast, everyone in the strike group knows another shot could still be waiting somewhere behind a dune line or inside a hardened revetment. At 5:33, the first target is confirmed. A mobile coastal radar system positioned near a prepared launch corridor, partially concealed, but not concealed enough. The targeting pod detects heat where none should be, vehicles grouped in military patterns, antenna geometry inconsistent with civilian traffic. The Hawkeye's earlier track data aligns almost exactly with the location. The strike lead wastes no words. Radar vehicle identified, valid target. The first Super Hornet banks slightly and releases. The guided weapon drops cleanly, and seconds later, the shoreline flashes bright white, then orange. Through the targeting pod, the radar vehicle disappears inside a rising cloud of debris and dust. A secondary flicker follows from a nearby support truck, not massive, but enough to suggest fuel or electronics igniting. The chain of control is beginning to break. At 5:34, a second sight activates farther east. This one is more dangerous. Not only a radar node, but what appears to be a launcher position, likely prepared in advance for anti-ship use and angled toward the water. The launcher itself is partly hidden, but the surrounding indicators are now unmistakable. Vehicle tracks, support vans, camouflage netting, a narrow access road feeding back toward firmer ground. The Growler presses harder into the spectrum. Jamming intensifies. The Iranian site tries to answer. A short burst of fire control activity spikes, then wavers. For a few seconds, one of the Super Hornets receives a warning tone in the cockpit. Not a launch warning, not yet, but a lock strong enough to remind every pilot in the package that the coast is still fighting back. The response is immediate. A second Hornet designates. Another precision-guided weapon drops into the launcher site. The result is violent. This time, the secondary explosion leaves no doubt. The blast erupts outward and upward, followed by a thick black column rolling over the shoreline. Fuel, ammunition, or something equally significant had been positioned there, and now it is gone. Inside the cockpits, no one reacts with celebration. They keep searching. At 5:36, the strike package shifts south along the corridor. The mission is no longer simply to answer the attack. It is to take the system apart piece by piece. Radars, launcher positions, command links, reload vehicles, anything that could rebuild the chain and set the next attack in motion. Minutes later, another site appears near a low ridgeline. Smaller, harder to identify at first. The lead aircraft circles only enough for the targeting pod to settle, and then the infrared image sharpens. Vehicle doors are open, personnel are moving. A communications mast is retracting in haste. Command post. The strike lead reports it. Clearance comes quickly. The third strike is the cleanest of the morning. The weapon lands beside the cluster of command vehicles, and the follow-on blast ripples through the position in a chain of smaller detonations and collapsing structures. Dust and smoke swallow the ridge. Whatever had been directing launches from that location will not be directing anything else this morning. Even then, the danger is not finished. At 5:38, one Super Hornet takes a fresh warning spike from farther inland, another pocket of Iranian air defense still active. The pilot brakes slightly, keeps the nose steady, and rides the edge of the threat envelope while the Growler blankets the sector once again. No missile launches, no aircraft is hit, but the meaning is unmistakable. This is still contested airspace, even if only in brief windows. Back over the Gulf, the Combat Information Center aboard Abraham Lincoln watches the feed and the updates in near real time. Every successful strike opens more room for the carrier group to maneuver. Every radar site removed reduces the odds of another inbound salvo. Every launcher taken out along the coast means fewer seconds stolen from the next watch team, fewer lives hanging on the hope of one final intercept. By 5:40, the Iranian coastal threat network is no longer functioning as a coordinated whole. There may still be isolated weapons left. There may still be boats on the water. But the structure that began the morning with missile launches and swarm pressure is breaking apart under layered American force. Not through spectacle, but through method. Detection, jamming, identification, precision, repetition. The strike aircraft begin turning back toward the Gulf. Below them, smoke drifts across the launch corridor. Behind them, the coastline has gone quieter. And for the first time since the first inbound track appeared, the USS Abraham Lincoln is no longer simply responding to the fight, it is controlling it. By 5:42 local time, the smoke is no longer out at sea, it is hanging over the coastline. From the bridge of USS Abraham Lincoln, the horizon ahead is beginning to clear. But off the Iranian side of the strait, dark columns still rise in thin, uneven bands where the strike package had torn through the launch corridor only minutes earlier. The carrier keeps moving. No abrupt turn. No retreat. Just a steady transit through a waterway that had nearly turned deadly before sunrise. On the flight deck, the first sign that the strike group has regained control is not cheering. It is movement. Yellow shirts step back into the lanes. Brown shirts guide aircraft into recovery positions. Red shirts move carefully through the maze of chained ordnance and support carts, restoring order where, only minutes earlier, sailors had been crouched low under the threat of impact. Above them, arresting gear crews prepare for returning aircraft with the discipline of a normal combat cycle. But nothing about this morning feels normal. The difference is visible in the faces, in the tempo, in the way every sailor keeps part of his attention beyond the task directly in front of him. Because everyone aboard Abraham Lincoln understands how close the moment had come. 5,000 people had begun the morning aboard a floating airfield in one of the narrowest and most exposed waterways on Earth. Before the sun had fully cut through the haze, that ship had faced a coordinated attack from both shore and sea. Anti-ship missiles, fast attack craft, layered pressure designed to compress time and force a mistake. It did not work, not because the carrier was invulnerable and not because the danger had been overstated, but because the system around it functioned exactly as it was built to function. Inside the Combat Information Center, the fight is already being turned into record. Missile tracks are replayed, engagement windows are logged, radar emissions are sorted by sequence and source, voice circuits are preserved. Every course change made by every Iranian boat, every spike from every coastal sensor, every second between launch detection and intercept is being written into the kind of log that survives long after the noise of the morning fades and preserves what actually happened. This is how the Navy remembers, not through headlines, but through timestamps. At 5:45, the first Super Hornet from the strike package returns overhead the formation. Then another. Then another. Deck crews watch them come down one by one, hooks catching steel, engines roaring, each jet trapped, cleared, and pulled aside for turnaround. The pilots do not step out to applause. They step into debriefs, hand signals, quick remarks to intelligence teams, short exchanges with maintenance crews already waiting beside the aircraft. What mattered out there is now being turned into the next layer of readiness. One aviator gestures back toward the coast as he walks off the deck. A maintainer gives a single nod. Nothing more is needed. On the outer screen, the escorts are still searching. The destroyer that stopped the lead fast attack craft remains offset from the carrier's quarter, radar sweeping, guns pointed outward. Its crew treating the calm the way disciplined sailors always treat calm after contact, as temporary. Another destroyer holds the opposite side of the formation, preserving the same layered defense that kept the carrier alive when the first missile tracks appeared. No one assumes the threat is over. They assume only that it has been disrupted. At 5:48, the first battle damage assessments begin to solidify. The mobile radar site disabled. The launcher corridor struck. The command node hit. The surface swarm broken before any boat could enter the carrier's inner defensive ring. No catastrophic damage to the strike group. No successful impact on the carrier. Only a debris field astern where the last close intercept broke apart above the water. On paper, it will read as control restored. In human terms, it reads differently. It reads as 20 seconds to terminal. It reads as sailors on the flight deck staring at the horizon while one track kept closing. It reads as tungsten, jamming, timing, and discipline holding the line. At 5:50, the Strait of Hormuz looks almost deceptively normal again. Shipping lanes remain open. Morning light spreads across the water. The carrier's bow continues cutting forward. From a distance, the strike group might even look calm enough to suggest that nothing had happened at all. But that illusion exists only at a distance. Inside the formation, everyone understands what just moved through these waters. Iran had not targeted an abstract symbol. It had targeted a living machine. Sailors, pilots, escorts, aircraft, radar crews, helicopter teams, electronic warfare operators, command staffs, and deck handlers, all tied together by a doctrine built for the exact moment when warning becomes impact and survival is measured in seconds. The attack was real. So was the response. No speeches come over the 1MC. No grand declarations roll across the bridge. USS Abraham Lincoln does not need them. It has done what a U.S. carrier strike group is built to do. Absorb the first shock, keep the center intact, break the attack chain, regain the initiative, and continue the mission. And that, more than smoke over the shoreline or wreckage on the water, is what changed hands that morning. Not just firepower, control. By 5:52 local time, the carrier is still underway. Jets are cycling again. Escorts hold their spacing. Radars continue sweeping every band and bearing. Behind the formation, the debris field drifts and fades. Ahead, the strait narrows into more uncertainty. But now the uncertainty does not belong only to the Americans. Iran had aimed at a symbol. What it meant instead was a system built to absorb the first blow and still shape the final outcome.